Hi there, Kendra Tolbert here. I'm a registered dietitian and yoga teacher, and I specialize in women's health, fertility, and PCOS. And today I have an interview for you. I just interviewed Kezia Okafor, who is a mental health professional who specializes in fertility. This was one of my favorite interviews so far. I probably could say that about all of them if I'm honest. I just love the people that I've had a chance to chat with. So Kezia shared some amazing information on how to decide which route of treatment might be appropriate for you. She shared some of her favorite self care practices for people who are experiencing infertility or simply existing as human, because it's not always easy. And I don't want to waste any more of your time. I want to get right into it so that you can benefit from this interview. Okay, let's get started. Hi, Kezia. Thank you so much for being here. It really is an honor.
Thank you, Kendra. It's lovely to be with you too.
Oh, okay, so we're going to hop right in. I've been following you for quite some time on Instagram, but I'd love it if you would introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm Kezia, and you can find me on Instagram at the Infertility Counsellor. Um, I'm a counsellor. I'm a fertility mindset coach, and I help women who are going through infertility. I help them to manage the emotional distress of that process, that journey. And that's whether they are in treatment, so assisted treatment like IVF or IUIs, that kind of thing, or if they're trying naturally on their own. And I think the emotional impact, the mental health impact is the same regardless. It's a incredibly stressfully traumatic thing to go through because nobody expects to go through it. And it's, for me, it feels really important to help women cope with that side of it, because when you go into treatment or when you are going through it on your own, that's the bit that nobody's really talking about or supporting you with. So that's what I do. I love what I do. And yeah, you just hope that no woman feels alone on this, on what can be an incredibly isolating period of her life.
Yeah, it's incredibly important work. So thank you for doing it. How exactly did you start working in infertility or fertility?
Yeah, so it really came from my own personal journey with infertility. At first, it wasn't what I was planning on doing or even advised to do, really, because when you're going through it yourself, it's very hard to support other people. But when I got to a point where in my own journey, I felt very much like, okay, I'm done with that. I can cope with that very well. I was in a very accepting place. Um, I just felt like, oh, it was time for me to. That was where I could really be of the most use. Really, that I think there's something powerful in really sitting there with someone who goes, yeah, I get it. I really understand it. I haven't just read about it, or I'm not guessworking, but I really understand what you're going through. And I think the main reason I got into it was because when I was on my own journey, I couldn't find anything. Like I said, nobody was talking about the mental health side, no one was talking about the emotional side, and I couldn't help thinking, well, why not? And when I just so happened to retrain during all of my fertility journey as a counsellor, and I kept saying to my own therapist, like, why is no one talking about this side of it? And so I just knew that I had to kind of plug that gap, really.
Yeah. Hmm. I always love speaking to people who have taken their own experience and turned it into something where they're able to support someone else. It seems like a very common way that people end up kind of in this women's health or fertility world is their own personal experience, or the experience with someone that they loved really was the driving factor behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think most counsellors and therapists come to this work by having gone through something. And I always say that nobody gets through this life unscathed, right? We've all got something, and I think it's just having the courage to work through it and then to turn around and help someone else. And it really is the most powerful journey.
Yeah. Now, there are so many different types of counselors and therapists, and they all have different modalities that they seem to use. What are
Yeah.
your go-tos? Like, how do you approach like a therapeutic practice?
Yeah, so my training is in art therapy and art psychotherapy, and it really works with the unconscious process of a client. But it's very much the work that I tend to do, it's very much person centered, like a humanistic approach. So to really sit with the client where they are, as they are, and just kind of be with them. Especially since COVID, because of having to move online. The artwork does come through, but it comes through in a sometimes a different way. Like I work with the unconscious in a different way. But I think working online is very much being about with the person and kind of sitting with them in their experience. And everyone, and I think that's important because, you know, 10 people could go through IVF, but they're not experiencing it in the exact same way, right? So it would be wrong of me to sit there and just assume that I know what the client, or the woman or the client is going through. So my approach is to be really interested in, how are you? How is this affecting you? In what ways is it affecting you? And I want to hear what their experience is of it. Because, like I said, everyone experiences things in different ways and brings different things to it and has different lifestyles and upbringings. And so that's all part of it. It's all part of the process. So often while we might talk about infertility, sometimes it goes into, other areas because we're human beings and we are more than just one thing.
Always, always. What are some of the challenges that you see people experiencing or facing when they're experiencing infertility?
So for me, the biggest challenge I think is um, the effect on their identity as a woman, as a person, on the life that they thought they were going to have. And so a lot of it is, while there's stress involved, a lot of the time there's a lot of grief. A lot of the women that I work with have also gone through losses and miscarriage. So, and then there's also the grief of the life that, didn't come about, or the life that you thought you were going to live. So there's a lot of almost grief work. And a lot of times there is actual grief work. And then it's really, yeah, that who am I? If I don't have children, and that fear, and managing the fear and the anxiety around not just through the treatment, but also, what the future holds. So that's the challenge that we're holding quite a lot on the face of it. It seems like a woman is coming to you because she can't have a baby. And it's like, oh, okay. But actually, when you take it apart, it's a bit like an onion. There's so many layers to it, and the more you peel back, um, there's so much there. So it's not on the face of it. It's always more than what it seems.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times when my clients come to me, there's a lot of mistrust around their body. There's a lot of feelings of betrayal. And so a lot of people have shared with me that they literally feel like their bodies have betrayed them. And it's
Mm.
likely not the first time that they've felt that way, but it's definitely like the strongest experience of it. What sort of advice would you have for someone who is feeling that betrayal, that feeling that their body is not on their team?
Oh, it's such a big part of it, isn't it? And I know it myself, that to feel like your body's failing, it's not working in some way. Um, and it's to sit with them and be with them in that, and not necessarily, and to really hear that, like, that the pain of that. And like you said, it's not probably the first time that they felt that way in their lives. And I think as women, we probably have quite complicated relationships with our bodies anyway. So that's always there. Um, And so what I sometimes sit them with and just get them to come back to the really basics of what the body is doing. Like, even if it's not doing what you want, it's not doing the thing that you want it to do, can we appreciate it for what it is doing? I think sometimes we don't appreciate that. We don't really know how we get pregnant. We know how we get pregnant in an obvious way, right? But we don't know how, the miracle of that act, really. We don't know exactly when it takes place or how it takes place. The body is such a complex organism. And so when it doesn't work, we can be quite hard on it, like, why is it not working? But we don't really know how it functions anyway. And so I always say to people, like, let's think about it. We're here, we're talking, having a conversation, but we're also breathing. Cells are wiring and firing and dying and regenerating. It's doing all of these things all of the time. If we could just come back to the very basics of this body, this place that I live in, this home, I always call it my home, it's keeping me alive. And what kind of relationship do I want with it? Do I want it to be a war zone? Do I want it to be this bleak, dark place that I have to live in for the next 40 or 50 years of my life? How do I want to feel about this place that I live in? And so it's just, and I guess that's where the kind of the unconscious and the art therapy comes in, where you can kind of start to create a different connection with the body other than this thing that isn't working properly.
I love that you said that. I love that you called it an organism and that you refer to how complex it is. I feel like often we see our bodies as machines, and you even hear that sort of terminology that,
Yeah.
like, it's a machine. So it's this idea that if something's wrong, then I have to fix it and I have to figure out exactly which piece is missing. And there's this sense that things are broken or missing, as opposed to bodies are complex, which is exactly what I think more people need to hear. Absolutely.
And sometimes I wonder if that's very much from a medical approach. I mean, the medical field has to treat our bodies like that in a certain way, because you couldn't perform surgery on people otherwise. In the way that our modern medicine does, and does miraculously save lives because of it. But I think because of that, on a wider scale in society, we do, like you say, treat our bodies like machines, and they are broken parts, and we go and get that bit fixed, and we go and get that pill and fixes that. And actually it's far more complex than we can even imagine and kind of give it credit, really.
Yeah. And because of that complexity, I think it can be really difficult for people to know exactly which treatment would be appropriate for them. So, how do you walk someone through choosing for themselves what would be the right form of treatment for them?
It's always a hard one. I think, sometimes clients want you to kind of say, like, what do you think? And it's like, what do you think? Um, I think, again, it comes down to trusting themselves and getting them to realize that where in the past have they made really good decisions? Where in the past have they been able to trust themselves and it turned out well? And that they can make this decision. And the decision doesn't have to be what other people would do. There's always going to be people out there who are going to have opinions. But what matters most is, like, what do I think and feel about this? And actually, I always encourage my clients as well to, one of the big, I guess, my bugbears about infertility and its treatment is that often it feels like there's no time. And so I encourage my clients to kind of realize that there is always time to sit back, reflect, question, get a second opinion, do the research, and really take the time to figure out actually which route is right for me, and that it will benefit them in the long run if they do that, rather than just kind of rushing ahead and reacting. Usually that leads to a stressful experience, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes a not very positive outcome. But I think if the more that we take our time and make decisions that are right for us, whether the outcome is positive or not, there's an empowerment there, because you sat back and you thought, like, what is right for me? And so while I don't necessarily point them in a direction towards a particular treatment, I help them to just, pause a little and reflect and kind of make a decision that is empowered and is right for them.
I like that. I like that. I remember on your Instagram, you had kind of this, it was an acronym that you used to actually, which steps to take to figure it out. No worries. I'll link to it. I think I might have actually shared it in another video that I did where I was talking about my favorite fertility mental health professionals. I forgot to tell you, I shouted you out in that video, right?
Yeah.
I think I linked to it there. So I will link to it again in the description box. At what point during someone's fertility journey should they reach out to someone for mental health support?
It's going to be different for everyone. I would say the sooner the better. I think what we have to understand is that before someone has even gone into a fertility clinic or into any kind of treatment, they've already been trying for quite a long time unsuccessfully. And so my feeling, what I would want people to do in an ideal world, if I had it my own way and I could wave a magic wand, at that point when they're reaching out to a fertility clinic for help, it would be a good idea to get some kind of emotional support at the same time. That's in an ideal world. And the reason I say that is because you've been trying a year, 2 years, however long on your own, and it's been unsuccessful, you're already in a kind of stress response by that point because it's not working. And then you're going into a treatment that is, again, like stepped up a notch, I guess, where it's going to be a different kind of stress, but it can be a really stressfully and traumatic process. So I think getting support at the beginning before you kind of go through that process, just to manage the anxiety or the fears or anything that's coming up, is a really good idea. For those that don't go into treatment, again, I think it's really recognizing, and I think, we all have low days, and so I'm going to caveat this with, like, we all have mental health, blips, everyone, nobody doesn't have it. But I think it's when you recognize that actually I felt really low, I felt like I've been in quite a dark place, or I feel like my sleep's being affected, or I just don't feel good about, whatever it is, like mentally I'm going into quite a dark place. I think once you start to recognize that actually it's been longer than, say, a week, or actually I've been in this place for, a month or a couple of months now, it's like, that's when you need to go and get support. Mm-hmm. We're not good at recognizing that because we kind of can get used to being in a certain place and a certain state of mind, and a certain state of feeling. But the more, and this is in my work, it's always about encouraging people to really recognize, like, what's going on? What are you feeling? What are you, are you down on yourself? Like, what's your self-talk like? What's your, really pay attention to these things. And the more attention you can pay, and you start to realize, actually, I do need support and I do need help. And there should be no shame around reaching out either. I think that's an important point to make as well.
Yeah, there's absolutely no shame. I'm with you in reaching out for support. And what you said about everyone having down days and mental health blips, I think is an important thing to acknowledge, because I am of the belief that humans just really benefit from being in contact with other humans. And so sometimes it's okay to just reach out to a therapist, at least in my opinion, simply because you're humaning. because this is an interesting experience to have, simply
Yeah,
existing.
but just existing is an interesting experience. And yeah, and I think it really always surprises me when I have a client and I say, it's normal. And they kind of go, really? I'm not weird. My mental health, I think there's a lot of like almost stigma, but a very almost I don't know, benign stigma where people just go, well, I don't want to be depressed for too long. I don't want to be down for too long, because then I'll have a mental health issue. And it's like, oh no, not really. You're just human in a very difficult experience, and it's normal. And I think the more we talk about it and say, like, this is normal, it's okay, come and talk to someone, and if you can't afford a therapist, because let's be real, not everyone can afford that, it is important to talk to someone, you know. Here in the UK, we do have some free services. I don't know if you guys do, but there's always, I just think, friends, well, be discerning. Not all friends are you can talk to, but find someone, who is a good listening ear and can support you. I think it's a really important part of our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. So, what are actually, let's just go with one. What is your go to self care practice?
For me personally,
Well, for you personally, and then, yeah, let's add one on, and then one that you would recommend for someone who is experiencing infertility.
okay, so my personal one is journaling. It's taken me a long time to get into journaling. At first, it was just, but I wasn't one of these people that grew up with a diary and was like, I had commitment issues, couldn't really keep it up. But in the past year, I've gone through must have gone through about 6 or 7 journals. I just find it really beneficial to work through things, and I'm not I'm not a daily person. Some days I will write that much. Some days I won't write anything at all, and then some days I can write pages and pages. But it's been really beneficial for me and it's one part of my practice. But I notice the effect if I don't do it. So it's been a really beneficial part of my practice. For I always talk to my clients about journaling because I do think it's a very powerful tool, and it's not for everybody. But one thing I always talk to clients about at some point, because most of my clients are experiencing some kind of anxiety, is we do talk about breath work, and I think breath work is really important. Even if it's just, that real deep breathing into the belly, to really calm the nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system down. And it just makes such a difference. And, even I do it. I have, before I sit down to journal or meditate, is really calming, that calming breath. And I think it's such an importance in our daily lives because we barely spend time sitting, breathing, and taking time. And the breath really helps you to sit and take time and to know that there's time to just breathe and be. So for me, if you can do nothing else, breathe.
Yes, I am with you. And your breath is always with you. So it's not like something you have to run out and go get a pen and piece of
No.
paper and like headphones. Like you can always breathe and you can do it around other people, which is always nice.
Yeah, it's like, I was gonna say it's free, but like we all breathe, and sometimes I think people think breathe, like really, yeah, because we breathe, but we don't notice our breathing. Again, we don't notice our body, but the breath is amazing because it does bring you back into your body, connects you to your body, connects you to the world around you, really makes you present. It forces you to that deep breath, that conscious deep breath really forces you to be present. And it's really powerful. So yeah, it's cost effective. It's just, you know, it's surprisingly how well it works for mental health and, you know, emotional distress. It's just so simple. Um, but it's always the simple things that we underestimate and don't use.
Absolutely. So we're getting really close to the end of our conversation. So I want to ask a subscriber question. I'm looking over at it now. So she wants to know, how do you keep going when you're feeling discouraged and want to quit trying?
Yeah, take a deep breath. You know, again, I think what I would say is this is really normal, totally normal, to feel like I can't keep doing this, but I don't want to give up on my dream, right? And what I would say is it's okay. Again, it's like it's really working on, and this is part of the mindset, like it's really working on our relationship with time. Because a lot of the time we don't want it. We're like, well, I don't know how long this is going to be. I don't know how long I'm going to be in this. What if it never happens? You know, we are, you know, it's that future anxiety, right? Where we are kind of anticipating all that might go wrong and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really discouraging. But there's something about coming back to the present moment and being really okay with, okay, do I need to take some time out? Do I need to take a break? And knowing that that's okay. Do I need to go and regroup and, you know, take a cycle off and then come back when I'm feeling more like myself, like I can do it, like I'm stronger, stronger in myself, or more at peace in myself, that I can cope with it. And I think it's a lot of the time it's giving yourself permission to do that, but a lot of the time it's because of that relationship with time and that feeling of time's running out or there's not enough time that we don't allow ourselves to do that. So when you're feeling discouraged, what I would say is give yourself time to figure out what is the right course for you. And for some people, it will be, I want to keep going, definitely. And then it's like, well, okay, regroup, figure out how you're going to do that, how you're going to do that in a way that really supports yourself. You know, you don't have to come and see a therapist, like me, but what are the practices that you are going to put in to support yourself? What are the things that you're going to do to, you know, feel good and to, you know, keep that anxiety and that stress response in check, because it's really important. And then for other people, it'll be, I've come to the end of the road. And then it's like, okay, then what? And again, it's allowing yourself to regroup and say, okay, I'm okay. With me, I'm okay. I will be okay. And now I get to go on a different road and figure out what that road is. There's really no right or wrong, but I think that pause and taking time is really important.
Mm. Thank you for all of this. This has been absolutely amazing. And I'm certain that after people watch this, they're going to want to connect with you. So, where can people learn more about you and your services?
Yeah, so you can find me, as I said, on Instagram at the Infertility Counsellor. You can also find me on Facebook by the same name, at handle, whatever it is. Main place to find me is really Instagram. Have a website, KeziaOkafor.com. You can find me there too. Just going to launch a new Facebook support group as well. So you will be able, if you come into Instagram, you'll be able to find the link where you can come and join the group, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, you know, I've also got a book that you can, there's so many resources, but come and find me on Instagram. That's where I'm mainly hanging out.
Awesome. And I will make sure to link to everything in the description box below. So if you're watching this, just head on down there and take a look at those links and click over to anything that interests you. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kendra. It's been great.